You're listening to the Radio Wammo Breakfast, only on Kiwi.
Is joining us now, talk politics. It is Russel Norman, co-leader of the Greens. Morning, Russell.
Top of the morning to you, Wammo.
Top of the morning to you, and Country of Origin Labelling Week, of course.
About time we had it.
About time indeed. It looks to me like it's got the support of a wide range of people involved in food production and also on the consumer side as well. All it needs is the political will, I suppose.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, lots of New Zealand food producers have been calling out for country of origin labelling for years. Mandatory country of origin labelling on single ingredient products, which is the simplest way to do it. And of course, we're in a joint food regulator with Australia, and called Food Standards Australia New Zealand. And Food Standards Australia New Zealand has passed a rule requiring country of origin labelling, but the last government, the Labor government, took an exemption against it, and that's the only reason we don't have it. The New Zealand government got outvoted on the board of Food Standards Australia New Zealand. It voted with John Howard, and all the states voted the other way. So John Howard and Helen Clark lost the vote against the Australian states. And as a result, Food Standards Australia New Zealand adopted mandatory country of origin labelling, but New Zealand took an exemption, so we don't have it.
Because the political reasoning always is because it's to do with trade, right?
So they say. Most of our trading partners have country of origin labelling, so we have to label our stuff anyway.
Okay, so where's the conspiracy theory here? What's going on, Russell?
Well, there's various theories. I mean, there's various theories about kind of some primary producer exporters that have their products going into other countries through various backdoors, unlabelled, and nobody knows what it is, which seems pretty ridiculous to me. Surely, the thing about New Zealand is we should be building the integrity of the New Zealand brand and actually promoting stuff that's from New Zealand. Like, what have we got to fear by telling people it's from New Zealand?
Now, I went along to a country of origin labelling forum last week. And
good on you, Wammo.
Oh, it was good. It was good. I learnt a lot. There were all sorts of people there. There was Gareth Morgan, Sue Chetwin. There was Sue Kedgley from the Greens. There were farmers. There were produce. There was a Ngāti Pia person. There was a tomato grower. So they were all over the show, and I did learn quite a lot. And one of the things that was brought up was the fact that there are other sectors, food producers like wine, where it's almost like a mark of pride that we that we label where it comes from. It puzzles me why we can't get that right across the board.
Well, it's, and the other way to look at it is, that in the past, New Zealand hasn't wanted to upset China. Obviously, a lot of the unmarked food that comes into our country and is sold unmarked comes from China. So maybe they don't want to upset the Chinese. I mean, who cares? The point is that people have got a right to know where their food comes from. It's really simple to do. They do it in most of our trading partners. Why can't we do it here?
Yeah, exactly. All right. Well, on that note, we'll move on to the announcement yesterday that there is going to be a referendum on whether or not New Zealand wants to stay with the current electoral system, MMP, or move on to something else. It's going to be done in two parts, initial in 2011 and then another one in, is it 2015, I suppose, 2015? 14. And then we'll go with whatever it is in 2017. So it's a two-step process. Did the question need to be raised at all, do you think, Russell?
Well, obviously we weren't pushing for an MMP referendum, but we also accept that the people own the electoral system. Politicians don't own the electoral system, the people do. It was put into place by a referendum. So it should only be changed by a referendum.
But where's the drive come from to even ask the question in the first place? I wasn't aware that everyone in New Zealand were asking questions. As far as I can tell, it's only the National Party.
Well, and it's not even all the National Party. It's the hard right. They've crawled out from under a rock after hiding under there for a number of years, and now we have them reappearing. So the people that tried to stop MMP, like Peter Shirtcliffe, back in the 90s, and all the people who complained that assets aren't being privatised fast enough, because that has been one of the complaints with MMP, is you can't privatise all the government-owned assets fast enough. They've come out and they want to get rid of MMP because it's too democratic for them.
democratic. There are issues, of course, with MMP. There's been, bizarre circumstances, with New Zealand First and various smaller parties like ACT having more say than they were proportionately voted or given in the election. So there are issues where smaller parties have a little bit more say than what they possibly were sanctioned.
There are some issues around the edges, but compare that with First Past the Post. In 1993, the National Party and Jim Bolger got a majority in Parliament with 35.1% of the vote. 35.1% of the vote the National Party got at the general election in 1993, and they had a majority in Parliament, which they could then use to ram through whatever they damn well please. So, yes, the MMP can be improved at the margins because there are the issues about when Rodney Hyde got in and dragged in, I think, 4 MPs with him. Yeah. Curiously enough, including Roger Douglas. And we could talk about how it could be improved, but the key issue is that the old system, which they so keen to go back to, was profoundly undemocratic, whereas MMP is a fair system because the number of seats you have in Parliament is determined by how many votes you get. It's proportional.
Okay, so we are going to be lumped with this referendum, it looks like, no matter what anyway. Are you concerned at all about the process leading up to it, about the education process, about how the public are going to be informed about what system is going to be best, and how much say do political parties have in all this?
We are concerned about it, and we don't have a lot of say. The government's just doing what it likes. It's consulting, but it's totally token. This process should be run by an independent agency like the Electoral Commission. It shouldn't be run by whoever happens to be the majority party of the day, or governing party of the day. So our view all along is that the Electoral Commission should run it, so that they should write the question, and they should run the education campaign and have a decent budget for it, so that we can actually make sure it's a fair process. And then the other side of it is the spending caps. We saw during the last referendum that the Peter Shirtcliffes of the world, the people who want to go back to the 80s and 90s, they ran a massive campaign. So we need to actually have some limits on how much spending there can be, because otherwise it becomes a giant money fest.
Yeah. Do political parties come out with their preference either way?
I imagine some of them will and some of them won't. So obviously, the Greens are pro-MMP. We think it's a fairer system, much more democratic.
But at the same time, let's be honest, under other systems, the Greens would be off into oblivion once again.
Yeah, that's right. John Key's been promoting a system called supplementary member and trying to pretend that's proportional, but supplementary member would mean the Greens would have 1 or maybe 2 seats in Parliament based on the last election result instead of the 9 that we have currently, and National would have a simple majority. So, yeah, you're right. If you went to supplementary member or First Past the Post, it would go back to the old days and parties like the Greens wouldn't get represented in Parliament. So, yeah, it's true.
Is the problem here that the left of the political spectrum is so fragmented? It's split off into smaller parties, Labour, the Greens, and various other small factions as well, where the right is generally mostly just national. So, therefore, under a First Past the Post system, it will favour the right because most people are galvanised into that one party.
I reckon there's some truth in that, but remember the system's simplified quite a bit. We're currently, we have 2 one-person parties that are likely to disappear at the next election, or within the 1 or 2 electoral cycles, which is United Future and the Progressives, Jim Anderson and Peter Dunn. They're going to disappear. And then you're going to be left with basically National and ACT, the Greens and Labour and the Māori Party. So you're going to have essentially a 5-party setup, and so it's not quite as fractured as you might think. And I'd also just make the point that, from our point of view, there's not only a left-right spectrum, there's also a green, anti-green spectrum or a sustainability spectrum. because the left-right stuff is relevant,
Yeah.
but it's not the only issue. We also have the issue of human survival on planet Earth.
Oh, that's
and
right.
if we don't deal with sustainability, then we're buggered.
Oh, that's right. It doesn't matter what electoral system we have if the Earth that we are standing on doesn't sustain us anymore. So,
Yeah, if we cook it.
I forget about that. It's easy to forget, isn't it? Oh, that's right. And there's that oil crisis as well. That hasn't gone away either.
Yeah, there is that oil crisis.
Yeah. Thanks very much, Russell. Cheers for your time.
Pleasure. Hey, you're going to watch the media show, Wammo.
Oh, which one?
We're passing through the tail of Halley's Comet. We're passing through some debris, a whole bunch of debris from Halley's Comet.
Are we?
At the moment, and there's heaps of meteors going on at the moment.
Oh, right, okay. Oh, well,
one to look out for.
As long as it's this weekend, I can't stay up too late on the weeknights, but I'll have a look this weekend. Thanks.
Get up before dawn tomorrow.
Okay. Oh, well, that's easy for me.
Yeah.
Thanks, Russell. Cheers.
Okay. Cheers, mate.
Oh, that's very